Welcome everybody to Monday's Let's Do Lunch from Digital Media Wire. My name is Colin Dixon, founder and chief analyst at nScreenMedia, and I'm standing in for Ned. Ned is unable to join us this morning, so I'm doing his little introduction. And so I want to tell you, we have a great week for you. We have a full slate. For example, tomorrow, we have in the future of entertainment, we have Chris Linland, who is CEO of Beta Brand, interviewed by David Bloom of Forbes. And as I say, it really is going to be a great week. So please tune in. And I also wanted to remind you, if you really enjoyed the previous Psychology of the Subscriber videos, we've had two so far, two interviews with Singular and the psychologist that they help look at how people behave when they subscribe. We have the final episode, and I promise you it's going to be a blockbuster on October 19th. So when I get a chance, I will drop, or maybe I can ask Laura if you can drop the link to that into the chat at some point, Laura. That will be super. So make sure you tune in on October 19th. And today, we really have a great session for you. Now, I know some of you may have heard of VUit, reported in the press a couple of weeks ago, working with local broadcasters. We're very lucky today because we have Jack Perry, who is CEO of Syncbak. Welcome, Jack, to the webcast. Pleased to have you here.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
And so before we get into the details about VUit, which I'm personally very excited about, and I know, of course, you are, as it's your service, why don't you tell us a little bit about Syncbak?
So Syncbak is a company I started back in 2009 to take local broadcasters. We weren't calling it over the top back then, but to enable local broadcasters to use the internet to reach their viewers on any device.
Very good. So I just want to remind everybody, please introduce yourself on the chat to your fellow viewers. And also, if you have questions for Jack, or even for me, but preferably for Jack, please enter them on the QA window. I am not looking at the chat window, so enter them there. So Jack, there's a lot of history in Syncbak, isn't there? You actually, I think you actually started, you've had a long history of broadcasting. You started Antenna Web many moons ago, which I personally have used to point my antenna on my roof. Give us a little bit of the history of the company.
Yeah, so my last company, which I sold just before starting this one, was called Decision Mark. And I created the technology that back in the late 90s was really needed to help the satellite companies make sure that they were offering the right ABC, NBC, CBS, and Fox affiliate to their particular subscribers. So, I wrote a technology, jumped in the middle between the subscribers and all of the broadcasters and the satellite companies to make sure everyone got the right channels. And while that may seem kind of obvious today that a technology could do that, it was not in 1996 when I started that. And that technology ultimately morphed into Antenna Web. We had the transition from analog to digital television happening, and I thought, here's a good way to use the technology. First thing a viewer needs to figure out is, all right, if I had an antenna, which channels would I get? And then from there, they needed to understand which is the optimal antenna to get those channels. And as you mentioned, you got to point that antenna in one direction to make sure you're getting the channels. And that actually, that led to TitanTV.com, which was really the first electronic program guide that had technology hooks in it to turn your PC or your laptop into a DVR. So it was kind of like TiVo without TiVo back in the day.
So you have a long history with broadcasting, and in fact, Syncbak is a pretty important part, even without VUit, is a pretty important part of the distribution for local broadcasters today, right? Tell us how you're helping with that.
So the first thing that we needed to do was to create a standard. And so today we have 741 channels that are on our platform. And so we embed our technology into the local TV station. We grab their over-the-air broadcast. We pull that broadcast to the cloud, and then we hand it off to the likes of Hulu and Fubo and CBS All Access, and even NFL on Sundays takes broadcasts from us to make sure that they're getting the right broadcast handed back down to the right viewer, depending on the market that viewer's in. So yeah, we kind of sit in there. Most people haven't necessarily heard of us or know that our technology sits there in the middle, but it does, and it makes sure that everybody has a great experience when they're watching broadcast TV over the top.
So I suspect that gives you a completely different perspective on Sunday football to the rest of us, right? While we're sitting back and enjoying the game, you're wondering if everything's running well with the distribution system.
Yeah, I'm also hoping that my phone does not ring, because if it does, that's probably a bad thing. And most of the time it doesn't ring. But you're right. We actually have a group called NetOps. And so say when we're handing off the games from CBS to a Hulu, we're actually ingesting 208 local CBS affiliates and making sure that they're all up and humming. And then we're handing them off to Hulu and Fubo and CBS All Access.
So you have this very good existing relationship with local broadcasters, and at some point you had this idea for VUit to leverage that relationship and help them. So why don't you tell us, where did the idea for VUit come from?
Well, I think that really I can track it all the way back to a broadcaster named Brian Brady, who sent me on a mission about 10 years ago. And Brian owns a broadcast group called Northwest Broadcasting. And the first thing that you need to do when you're taking a broadcast from a market is make sure that it's only going back into those viewers in that same market. We also then, 10 years ago, didn't have the rights, the digital rights for any of this programming. It was a brand new platform. And so the content owners first needed to kind of vet the technology. So while I was out there proving to the rights holders, the studios, that, hey, look, we can grab the broadcast, keep it in the same market. The very first show that we ever cleared was the Ellen Show. Actually, it was the very first show that any digital rights were cleared for, and my company did that. So in the course of going out and clearing the rights for all of this programming, we learned a ton. And it was very clear to us that our broadcasters were going to, of course, support the VMVPD business, but they were also going to chart a course for their own future, where they took and created new programming to deliver over the top. And that was really the genesis of VUit, was our broadcasters saying to us, hey, we want to do more.
So that brings us right up to date. So tell us about VUit.
So VUit, we launched a couple of weeks ago. We ran about a 6 to 12 month actually pilot called SBTV. It was a proof of concept, really. And so VUit is really the ability for a viewer to tune into stations in the market that they're in, maybe the market where they're from, maybe there's programming in the market where you're going, or probably most important nowadays is where news is breaking. So the whole idea around VUit is to put the local viewer in control of the programming that they want. And our aim is to be the Netflix of live, local, and free. And we're going to get there by bringing content from 210 DMAs across the US.
So let's talk a little bit about the features, because the first thought people may be having is, well, is a DVR included? But they really don't need one, do they?
Well, that's the DVR, I guess, is included if you consider the fact that if a show is available for on demand, as it's airing, we are automatically recording that show for everybody. And then it really comes down to a rights issue. Is it available in the market that it was aired? Is it available in all markets? Is it available worldwide? So you're right. It's, I guess maybe the best DVR is no DVR at all. And that's the way ours works, because it essentially takes the programming, and if it is available, makes it available to the right people.
One of the things that came up when I wrote, as you know, I wrote a piece after we talked the first time, was very impressed with the service, and somebody immediately came back to me and said, hey, but they only have local news. What are they do? What are they going to do with all of the rest of that time? So what are they going to do with all the rest of that time?
So that's not 100% accurate. Of the stations that we have on our platform today, the first thing we do is create an always-on wheel for them. If that viewer was trying to watch a station from another market, then it probably was predominantly news, because we're taking the most recent newscast and we're looping it until there is something else to replace with that programming. But if you're an in-market viewer, you're seeing much of the broadcast day, you're seeing the off-net syndication, and then when we reach prime time, we give the stations the ability to do a number of different things. They can switch over to a digital sub-channel, or they can put in replacement programming, or they can create new live programming. So really it's all over the board what the broadcasters are doing. And rather than me sit and try to figure out the best approach, I'd rather have hundreds of broadcasters figuring out the best approach for the programming. So it's by far more than just the news.
Far more, far more. So no dead air. There's something going on those channels all the time. Now, let's talk a little bit about some of the underpinnings of the service. And I think probably one of the most important underpinnings is the digital ad insertion. Now, this is core technology that Syncbak has been developing for years, right? It
is. And today, on an average month, we do 250 million avails on our platform, where we're taking the ads which are going out over the air, we're pulling those out, and we're using our technology called AdSync to replace those ads with better, higher paying ads into that individualized broadcast. So from the cloud down to the viewer, it's a whole separate track of commercials.
Right. So with that sort of underpinning, let's dig into the business model that powers VUit. Now, one of the things that I was very impressed with is that as you described this to me, it really felt like a win-win. Actually, a win-win-win. Win for the broadcasters, win for VUit, win for the viewer. Let's talk about how this ad insertion model works and how the monetization works in VUit.
So the first thing that it does is, whenever there's an avail, we look into the available ads that are out there and we pick the highest paying one. We happen to firmly believe that the highest paying ads are going to be those sold at a local level. And the reason being is, on a local level, you already have a sales force on the street that's going out there and selling ads for over-the-air broadcasts. Now the opportunity, actually the playing field is getting leveled. So you got your big advertisers like your car dealers, but what about here in Marion, Iowa, where we are, there's a Kathy's Pies. And Kathy's Pies is probably out of $1,000 a month ad budget. Well, in the over-the-air broadcast world, that's not going to get Kathy's Pies a whole lot. In fact, she'd probably end up on the Sunday morning real estate showcase. Not that that isn't great placement, but in the over-the-top space and using our technology, that $1,000 that Kathy's Pies has goes a lot further, and it actually spends just as well as that big-time advertisers. And there's a whole lot of small advertisers out there. And so our strategy and our plan and what's working is we're deploying the local broadcasters' sales teams to go out there and sell those incremental smaller advertisers in the world of OTT. So
this is actually a three-tier model, if we can think of it that way. Mm-hmm. So it's incremental to the local broadcasters in three sort of ways. The first is that they have an additional sale in their own market with the local advertisers, right?
That's right. Right.
So that's way one. Mm-hmm. Way two is that they have the local inserts. They can insert ads into the local into a local viewer of another broadcaster, right, from outside the area. Talk us through that, because that's a little bit complicated.
It is, and it's we call it out-of-market advertising, out-of-market programming, out-of-market programming within market ads. It really isn't any more complex than that. So you have the broadcaster who is providing the content. You have a broadcaster who, in the market that the viewer is in, who's kind of loaned that viewer to a broadcaster from another market. So the broadcaster in, say, Michigan is delivering their programming to a viewer in Arizona. they deserve a cut because it's their programming. But how about the broadcaster in Arizona who's provided the viewer to watch that programming? More than likely, that person is just pulling in the Michigan broadcast for a short period of time, and then they're going to go back to viewing locally. In our scenario, everybody wins. The content owner, the viewer wins because they get what they want, and that local broadcaster wins because they're generating revenue off their local viewers, even though they're watching another market. Everybody wins.
Indeed, and so I've actually seen this in action because I was watching an Anchorage station, which is actually one of the most interesting stations I think you carry. Very eclectic, I would class it. And I noticed I got a local ad for here in California.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be a big deal, and especially on what we're trying to do with this platform of, the Netflix of live, local, and free, because you're going to see that station in Alaska is covering the Iditarod. They cover it every year. The people in the market that they serve have tuned into it every year. Last year, when we put it out there during our pilot, we had viewers from 120 different markets tuning in to watch the Iditarod. So there's people in, sunny, warm Florida watching the Iditarod and that station in Alaska. So it really is taking programming that is hyper-local, makes it available locally, regionally, nationally, and in many cases now internationally. And so the local broadcaster has, an unlimited revenue possibilities worldwide, really.
So that is turning out to be a really big usage of the system, right? We hear about things happening in localities around the US, but those of us not in those regions really don't have an opportunity to see what the local broadcasters are saying. You give us that opportunity to see that, right? And that's a really big usage model.
We do. It's and we think it's gonna grow as more people learn about it. And when we built the technology, we really looked at there's news where you're at, there's news where you're from, there's news where you're going, and there's news wherever it's breaking. And if we can ultimately get to a point where our viewers understand those four conditions of the news, that it's always there on VUit, where you're at, where you're from, where you're going, and where it's breaking, we think that VUit's a game changer.
Very good. So I mentioned, I thought it was a 3-tier when we mentioned 2. Is there a national play here for local broadcasters as well?
Yeah, there's absolutely. In fact, the station in Cadillac, Michigan, owned by Heritage Broadcasting is one of the most outstanding over-the-top broadcasters out there. And they have covered, in fact, probably the longest straight to OTT. Let me just explain real quick what straight to OTT is. Local broadcaster has their 24/7 always on broadcast on VUit, but they also have programming that they cover, which is not going out over the air, but it's going straight to OTT. In the case of this broadcaster in Cadillac, Michigan, they went out and covered the I-500 snowmobile race. Now, you and I may not necessarily want to tune in to watch a snowmobile race, but maybe we will. In this case, the event lasted longer than 10 hours. It was over 10 hours long, covered the I-500 snowmobile race, and it was viewed in 104 DMAs. Now, one thing to keep in mind, there's no promotion that was done around these pilot broadcasts that we did over straight to OTT broadcasts. So you have a broadcaster in Cadillac, Michigan, not one of the biggest markets in the US, that said, you know what, I can get a much larger market by taking this niche event, if you will, and reach snowmobile fans in every market of the US. So if 104 DMAs had people find the programming without any promotion, imagine what the I-500 this coming season is going to do when we're actually promoting it all over the US. It's a game changer. So local to national OTT.
I don't know about interest, but I'm interested. I think I'll take a look when that comes out. Yeah. Now, one of the things that we didn't talk about was the original strategy. So obviously the local broadcasters have a creative team, both news and in local content, that they can use to help drive VUit, and they've actually agreed to do that, right? So talk us through the original strategy for the platform.
So, well, the original strategy for the VUit platform was to really let the broadcasters do what they do best, which is to create programming and to sell ads and to promote. And since, you know, we own our own tech platform, I figured, why don't we provide that, and the stations then can focus on what they're good at. And so the original strategy was really to VUit was just to enable every broadcaster to not only join an app, if you will, that has, you know, kind of that single destination for viewers, but also our strategy has been, look, if you're gonna join VUit, why don't we take over all of your website streaming and your app streaming and things like that, and you can forget about any cost at all. We'll just carry the cost. We'll waive the costs as long as you join into the network or the consortium, and that way, again, the broadcasters aren't thinking about, oh my goodness, it's September, October, I got to start budgeting for 2021, and what are my streaming costs going to be? If you join VUit, we eliminate those 100%, and everything moves into the revenue share model. And so, look, my goal is I'll make a small amount off of a whole bunch of broadcasters, and the broadcasters will make the vast majority of the revenue. And if I can connect broadcasters and advertisers and content owners into one unified platform, while not saying to a broadcaster, look, you got to do away with your apps or your websites, because I don't care, you can keep those running. I mean, viewers are accustomed to that. If I can make all of that work, then I think we have a win-win for everybody, including advertisers who need an on-ramp to OTT as well. And so
let's talk about the promotion for the service too, because obviously promotion, letting people know that it's there, is really important. And you're partnering with the stations again on that as well, right?
We are, and we've provided the stations with, you know, 15-second and 30-second avails. We've given them the creative to end their newscasts, to stay with us in digital, hop on over to VUit, that kind of thing. And, you know, stations are really just now kicking into doing that. And I can tell you, the stations that are actively promoting now, it's working. The viewership is up considerably in those markets. And, you know, look, we're going to work through this one station at a time, and we'll get there. And but who better to promote locally than the local stations themselves?
They certainly seem to have the local ear, don't they? And certainly in this election cycle, they're probably getting a lot more viewership than they traditionally, well, not traditionally, but they usually do in non-election years, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Have you got any early returns? Can you let us know how the service is doing?
I can tell you that, you know, our advertising is up about 300% since the launch of the product. And I mentioned the number of avails there that we're doing. I can tell you that the average viewer since launch has already been back 17 times, and they're spending, what has gone up considerably since the VUit launch is the viewing is almost 1 hour per viewing session, where previously it was about 30 minutes. So we're very pleased that the new viewers that we found through this early promotion are actually spending twice as long with us. And, you know, just to put some numbers around that, an average viewer or an average broadcast over the top live session creates about 63 avails, right? So it's 63 ad spots. You might think, well, hey, that's way too many, and I would agree with you. But when there's an ad pod that previously is going out over the air, you got to fill it, because we all have experienced that dreaded slate. We'll be back in a minute. We'll be back in a minute. So, you know, we tell our technology, if there's anything more than 6 seconds, go out and grab another avail and put it in there, because you have to do that in live.
Yep.
We don't want that dreaded slate. So, you know, we're seeing CPMs as high as $25 CPMs. So, you know, you can do the math, and 60 avails per hour at 2.5 cents. It's, you know, VUit's already a profitable offering for the broadcasters and for us, even in its early days, and we're thrilled that viewers are actually attracted to, you know, live, local, and free. And, you know, Colin, my first website was 1993. 1993, we started working at, launched it in 1994. Within 6 months, we were getting requests from others to put links on our website to theirs. So that was a form of advertising from the very, very early days. There couldn't have been more than several thousand websites back then. And so I think we've all become accustomed to, over the years, that the primary fuel on the internet is advertising. And we're just applying that here to this. to allow viewers to, get programmed. They pay for it by watching. And I think that model works. And I think it's one we've been comfortable with, especially today's younger generation. Ad supported seems to work really, really well.
Indeed. And the interesting thing is you're already getting $25 CPMs, which is pretty impressive. But I suppose over time, as you get to know your viewers better, that can only get better, right?
Yeah, my belief is that before we ask the viewers to turn over too much information, we better have a good reason for them to do so. So we'll never want to violate one's privacy, but I think you'll see VUit over time have a more one-to-one relationship with the viewers, because we're the ones sitting there in the middle. We're providing them access to the handful of stations that they watch and the programming that they watch. So we see ourselves as stewards to make sure that we're making the viewers comfortable. We're learning a little bit over time. Are you a Ford person or a Chevy person? Are you, a pickup versus a car, that kind of thing. And I think you'll see VUit kind of pave the way with a new way to gather more information about the viewers. So in the end, when they are watching on demand, they're going to see a whole lot less than 60 avails, because we don't have to fill up an ad pod. Those will be higher paying, more targeted ads, and that'll be a better viewing experience for the end user. And that's what we're all about.
Right. So I want to drop in a quick question from Paul Sweeting. Thanks for the question, Paul. Good to see you here as usual. And he's asking about what viewership metrics are you able to provide to advertisers and broadcasters? I'm guessing it's really what viewership metrics the broadcasters can provide to their advertisers rather than you providing them, or there's probably a data transfer going on here. So maybe you can talk about how that works, how you report the viewership numbers, and how you know that the broadcasters are actually talking to advertisers about the digital opportunity.
Yep. So we, as I mentioned, we sit in the middle. So we collect the aggregate data that's coming in from viewing, but then we share with the stations their own individual viewer metrics. And we also show them how those compare to the rest of the stations, but we obviously maintain the privacy between the stations without sharing their data. And then we also roll up the numbers on a group level. On our platform is, Gray Television, Morgan Murphy Media, Meredith, and so you have a group level viewer metrics, you have individual station viewer metrics, and then we have the kind of the mothership metrics. And look, this game is going to be won with data. There's no question about that. And so the better you can arm a salesperson with data that shows a advertiser. This is an interesting thing, because a local sales rep who has historically said, you need to be on Dancing with the Stars because that's going to reach the most viewers. We're not saying Dancing with the Stars isn't great, it is. But when a local sales rep is going out and selling the concept of OTT, they're selling access to the viewers regardless of what the viewer is watching. Now that may seem kind of scary, and it is, but remember what we are doing as a company. We are partnering with the local broadcasters who offer brand safety. And while this programming isn't going out over the air, it is going out over the top. And since there's a broadcaster in the middle who is vetting the programming, you know that there's a level of brand safety, and that level of brand safety is then passed on to the advertisers because a local station is involved with the vetting.
And brand safety is such a sensitive issue right now. It still remains a big problem for folks like YouTube. Yeah. So that brand safe data, that brand safe content is really important. And that point you make about reaching the viewer regardless of what they're viewing, I think it takes a, I think we inherently understand what digital insertion means, right. But what we really mean by targeting is not by content, but by viewer, regardless of what they're watching. And that, I think, is one of the really strong models that you have here. So I like to think forward a little bit. Okay. Obviously, we have a pretty good win-win-win situation here for everybody involved. How do you see this VUit? How do you see it evolving over time?
I think that we will all see broadcasters get more innovative in the space of OTT. I think you will see, and let me just describe what one broadcaster has done. So we have one that does it and they go out and prove that it works. look, I bought the old Frank Magid headquarters, the old research building. It had been abandoned for years. And Frank Magid would sell you a lot of research. And that research would come down and tell you that, look at what that station over there does and copy it. Be just as good as that station is across the street. And that was really wise. And so broadcasters instinctively know that if it works at one station, they should try it at their station. So I think what you're going to see over time is we had a broadcaster go out and cover a dirt track race. Now, I know from the day I launched Titan TV that two things, NASCAR, car racing in general, and Stargate Troopers were very popular programming with people using Titan TV. And so we supported the broadcaster who went out and covered this event. He put a camera in the announcer's booth that just followed the lead car. All right, they plugged that camera into our Syncbak, which is our hardware that typically sits in the stations now at a racetrack. They also took a microphone and put it right in front of the stadium announcer's regular microphone, right alongside it, and that's where they got their sound. So here's a broadcaster that sent out one person with a camera and with a microphone, and they were armed with our Syncbak, and they created a straight to OTT event. So I think that was pretty innovative. And they also had the ability now to remotely trigger an ad pod. So if they see an event, they see a lull in the programming or whatever, they can trigger an ad pod. They can set it to run 30 seconds, 60 seconds, 90 seconds, whatever it is. And so I think what you'll see is that more broadcasters will innovate just like that one did. But then you'll see new and innovative things like, covering parades, covering concerts on rooftops. They're going to go and find the hyperlocal programming, because remember the math I shared with you. If that one viewer watching 60 avails in an hour at a $50 CPM, that's a pretty significant amount of revenue per hour per viewer. So it doesn't really matter if they're creating programming for massive audiences. That broadcaster who covered the dirt track race had 89 markets that had viewers. So you'll see the innovation is going to be around finding those great hyperlocal events to go take them straight to OTT, figure out the right ad mix, and then do more and more of that and see where it goes.
So you mentioned the ad mix, and one of the things I think that puts people off of local broadcasting and broadcasting in general is the ad load. Do you see that being addressed over time with your enhanced ad values?
I think what you'll see is, well, in live, ad pod's the ad pod, we got to fill it. I think we are working on ways to put longer form ads instead of all 30s or 15s, which can create a kind of a herky-jerky ad experience. Why not, if we know the ad pod is 60 seconds, let's find a 60-second ad, that kind of thing. That will improve the viewer experience in live. I think with respect to on demand, we're going to just let the data tell us what is the optimal ad load. And if we're losing viewers because there's too many, look, I own my own tech platform, so the cost is negligible to take content from the source through the cloud and down to the viewer. We're in this to win, and we're in this to make it inexpensive for that small broadcaster in Glendive, Montana, 6,000 households, go out and create OTT programming. So I think you'll see a lot of innovation around finding hyperlocal unique events with the right ad load, and we'll figure that out over time.
Right. Now we're going to go to your questions out in the audience in just a second. So if you have questions for Jack, please enter them now. I have a couple or so in the queue. So please enter your questions now. We'll get to those in just a minute. And so it looks like there are local events is going to be a key category that they're going to be able to expand original contribution to the VUit platform. So does that mean that over time you see the VUit platform becoming maybe the exact way, the best way to enjoy your local broadcast? Is that sort of a trajectory that you're looking for?
I think it certainly, if somebody was going to replace the local broadcasters, that would have been done a couple of decades ago. And so I think what we have here is local broadcasters that are saying, hey, look, we want to find more ways to reach our viewers regardless of what device they want to use. And so I think we've solved that. And so from there, it's how can a local broadcaster grow to provide more programming. You know, typically you got a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week, programming line that you got to fill up. And in this space, you can have an unlimited amount of programming. And if you're out there getting your local advertisers involved, you know, you have an opportunity to tell them, hey, here's our programming suite of shows and events that we're going to carry. And I think you'll see that, broadcasters will create more. So I guess the answer is, yeah, we, and the aim to be the, Netflix of live, local, and free, it's going to focus on live and unique events. And, when someone's coming out of binge mode, we want you to land on VUit. And when you're getting ready to, or you're not ready to go into binge mode, we want you on VUit. And what better than strength in numbers with hundreds of broadcasters joining in to help us fulfill that mission.
Indeed. Okay, so we're going to go to the Q&A now. Laura, can we put the poll up so that people can be answering the poll questions? So I have, as usual, I have 3 poll questions sort of dotted around the areas that Jack and I have been discussing today. So while we're chatting and going through your questions, please answer those poll questions. And if you have any additional questions, type them in. I want to go to the first question that came in from Michael Heiss. He asks, what are your plans to integrate content and format info? And he says, including HDR, 4K, object-based audio, etc., for ATSC3 broadcasts. I knew ATSC3 was going to come up this morning. So how are you thinking about that? How are your participant broadcasters thinking about that?
I think, first of all, let me just say that every time there's been a transition in platform for the broadcasters, I've been there to help. When they were making the move from, not with cable, wasn't there in the beginning days of cable, but when they were making the transition over to satellite, I wrote the Geneva technology to make sure that local and the local works. So when you signed up for satellite, you got the right channels, as I mentioned before. And then when the transition from analog to digital, I poured my heart and soul into creating Antenna Web because I thought it was really would help viewers to see, number one, by the way, there's these over-the-air broadcasts out there and you could get them for free, so why not use this app to figure out the right antenna? And that actually, I'd say it worked pretty well. And so as we make this, transition to ATSC 3.0, it's a little bit different this time because there are so many ways to reach viewers, first over the air, then over cable, over satellite, and now over the top. And really the business models are being figured out, and the tech is still a little bit of a moving target on ATSC 3.0, but I can tell you we are in active discussions with a number of players in the ATSC 3.0 space. And the very first calls I got, I'll just tell you right now, right after VUit launched, was how can we get more tightly linked in with the ATSC 3.0 stuff that's happening. And so we're actively looking at that right now. And I can't imagine that, if there's something that we have that VUit can already do that can help ATSC 3.0, then we're going to do it. So hopefully that.
Actually, as you talked about the ability to expand the amount of content that's produced, I wondered if there's an alignment here already. Obviously, ATSC 3.0 gives the broadcasters a lot more sub channels that they can launch. Sinclair, of course, is planning to go to town on this and says that they're going to launch up to 32 channels in each area that they're already there. I wonder if some of the broadcasters are already thinking about expanding their content footprint with multiple channels, and if that can also feed into what you're doing at VUit. Is that something that you guys have thought about?
The low-hanging fruit there, as you mentioned, the 32 essentially channel digi-subs, I guess, or additional programming lines. That reach is only going to be as far as the digital reach is. So I think one low-hanging fruit implementation of our technology is to take that and then extend it to other markets where they actually have, if they have the digital rights to reach viewers in other markets, then we'll use VUit as the conduit to make that happen.
Yeah, it feels like we're on quite a long ramp to 3.0 though, doesn't it? I don't know what the stations telling you, but I think the Next Gen TV says they're going to be in 61 markets by the end of the year, but that's only maybe one or two channels possibly. And also there is no mandate to shut off ATSC 1.0. And in fact, any station that says that they're going to support 3.0 is mandated to continue to support 1.0 for at least, I think, 5 years after they start to support 3.0. So it feels altogether like it's quite a long on-ramp to ATSC 3.0, right?
Well, I think it is, and I can focus on what we can do today, and we can innovate, and we can help broadcasters innovate. And the last thing I would want to do is take my eye off the ball to make sure that we absolutely explore every opportunity for OTT. And recently, and part of the recent announcement, I guess, that came out with VUit was that Gray Television extended their stake in Syncbak, and we're very proud to have them as a shareholder. And I don't think they'd want me 2 or 3 years from now to say, oh, geez, I spent a lot of my time on the 3.0, and so I missed the mark on OTT. So we'll focus on what we can do, and I have enough of a technology track record with broadcasters that if we need to help out with 3.0 or whatever in the future, we can certainly step in and do that as well in the future.
Very good. So let's take a look at our poll results. So Laura, if you can put the results up, let's see what people had to say. So my first question was, which video news source do you trust the most? And guess what? Local broadcasters came up tops with 60%, 32% said they trusted cable news, and virtually nobody said that they supported YouTube or streaming news. And actually, I find that kind of surprising. Some of the streaming news channels are pretty good, right?
I think so.
But there you go. A total endorsement of the local news broadcasters. So next question, how often do you watch your local TV broadcasters? And it looks like still half of the audience is watching on a daily basis, and another 18% once or twice a week. So that's still 68, 70% of this digital insider audience that's still a regular viewer of local TV. So I guess that's kind of a validation of the VUit strategy, right?
It looks like it. Yeah,
Certainly.
but I can tell you that we are actively thinking about how do we attract a younger audience. And so what you'll see as VUit morphs in the next 3 to 6 months, we'll do some things to attract a younger. I mean, you think about the amount we ingest. Sorry, let me just tell you, we ingest 14 million hours of local broadcasts. That's not streaming. That's just the ingest side of things. And when you bring in 14 million hours of programming from local broadcasters, that's a lot of programming to figure out what's the optimal programming mix to attract a younger audience. And so we're looking very, very hard at what to do and how to leverage all that programming.
Yeah, you bet. And the last question here, 60 million US homes use over-the-air broadcast TV today. In 2030, local over-the-air TV broadcasts will, and it looks like most answers were, the local broadcasts will be used by less homes than today as audiences continue to move viewing OTT. So it's quite a large number of people who think. But interesting, only 9% thought that there would not be any broadcast, over-the-air broadcast by 2030, 10 years away from now. So pretty interesting result. Looks like, at least according to this, our audience, that it's going to be a mixed mode market for some years to come, Jack.
Looks like it. I mean, you think about what they do, what a local broadcaster does in exchange for their license. They serve the public good, the public trust. That's their job. That's job number one. And so, they're always going to be there. For me, it was a safe bet. I don't think they're going to go away entirely at all. May there be less? Might be less broadcasters overall, but they provide a pretty valuable service that we all, whether we rely on it every day, all day, or once or twice a week, they're still there and they're important.
You bet. You bet. Jack, this has been a delight. Thank you so much for spending time with us. I hope you'll come back and talk to us in a few months and let us know how the service is doing. I, for one, am enjoying using it a lot, and I will be definitely tuning back into that wacky Anchorage station to hear more about errant bears that are roaming all over the place. So thank you very much, Jack.
Thank you. Take care.
And thank you all for your attention. I hope you will join us tomorrow for the Future of Entertainment. Once again, that's Chris Linland, CEO of Beta Brand. We'll be talking to David Bloom at Forbes. My name is Colin Dixon, and this has been Digital Media Wire's Let's Do Lunch. Thank you, everybody.